you guys? It's the headphoneaddict.com here, and today I am doing a review of the Mytek Digital Stereo 192 DSD DAC. So quite a mouthful there. So in this review, basically what I'm going to do is give you an introduction, a product overview, where I talk a little bit about this unit and a couple of other versions. Then I'm going to flip it around and show you the rear view of the unit. Then I'm going to turn the unit on and show you how it operates. Thirdly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the sound characteristics. And lastly, I'm going to conclude with some pros and cons. So that's that. So, okay, I've been owning this device for about 6 or 7 months, and I've used it in several applications. Firstly, I have been using it as an headphone amplifier, also with the internal DAC. So I've used the DAC and the headphones amplifier, connected it to my computer, popped in the old headphones and listened to that. Secondly, I have used something called a bypass function, so you completely bypass the internal circuitry, volume circuitry, and just used it as a DAC for other headphone amplifiers like Burson Conductor, View Electric V200, Woo Audio WA2, Woo Audio WA6-SE. So it's got quite the headphone usage on it, and I've tried the DAC in many applications. Furthermore, I've also used it as a preamplifier for the stereo setup you see in the background here, and also in my main stereo setup, which is pretty big and revealing, I should say, as it's consistent of a couple of huge vintage JBL studio monitors, which basically enables you to hear everything. So that's my experience with it. Okay, so now let's talk about the product in and of itself. Basically, there are 3 versions of this. There is this version, which is the black preamp version. You have a silver version, which I'm going to pop up a picture of. And the silver version is basically the same as this preamp version. The only difference is that it doesn't have these LEDs at the front, so it looks a little bit more sleek, some would say. However, I do like these LEDs, and they can be turned off in the firmware, so I don't think there are any distraction. Furthermore, what is the difference between the preamp versions and the mastering version? Well, the preamp versions, meaning this one and the silver one, is that they have a couple of RCA single-ended inputs, so you can connect your CD player or some other source that has some analog outputs. That's the only difference. Whereas the mastering version has a couple of BNC inputs, where you can input basically some mastering SACD CD players and stuff like that. However, I thought it was better to just get the RCAs, so I got the black version, as I am very fond of black gear. So basically that's the difference between the 3 versions. However, as I said, all of them have volume, so you can use all 3 of them as a preamplifier. I think that they should have gotten another name, as it's quite confusing. So now to the rear of the unit. Let's swap it around. Okay, so here is the rear of the unit, and as you can see here, you have the digital inputs here, and we have the analog outputs here. So digital section and analog section. As we can see, it's all the usual suspects with SP diff in, which is the coaxial. You have Firewire, which is becoming more and more rare. You have USB 2.0 and you have USB 1.1 Toslink in and digital AES in. Now the word clock out and word clock in is basically used in professional applications, so these BNC in and outputs I have not had any use for. I think it's for synchronizing various units in multi setups, as you can stack these and have multi sound systems with many of them, so not really for the average person, I would say. And also, as I said, we have AES input, which is the balanced input, also mostly found in professional gear. And then you have the analog inputs, as I said, which this and the silver preamp versions comes with. And you have the outputs, so if you want to use this as, for instance, just a digital to analog converter, what you would do is to connect these outputs to another amplifier, headphone amplifier, or a amplifier on your stereo or something like that. And the same with the balanced outputs, and this is truly balanced, so it's not just a convenience thing, it's actually balanced. So fully balanced digital to analog converter. So that's the rear view. And also, if you want multiple setups, multiple RCAs, you can use something like these. Let me just hold them there. As you can see, if you plug in a couple of these, you can have one extra pair of RCA outputs. However, keep in mind that these outputs are at the maximum 15 volt out, and these are 7. So 7 volt out, 15 volt out. You can basically, inside this unit there's a couple of jumpers, so you can basically set the jumpers, it's all in the manual, and lower these outputs with 6 decibel each. So putting these back to 3.5 and these to 7.5. So that's basically it. Okay. Now let's turn on the unit and see it in operation. Okay, so let's turn the unit on. Okay, so now it's operational. As I see the picture here, and the LED seems much brighter in the video than it is in real life. So keep that in mind, it doesn't intrude so much in real life. So basically, let's go into this thing. Firstly, you have the volume knob, which also functions as a button, so it's a multi-purpose knob. Then you have the menu, and you have function 1 and function 2, which you can assign in the firmware. You have the standard 6.35 millimeter jack, or 1/4 inch jack, and the toggle switch for on and off, which you have probably never seen before because it's so amazing. So let's go into the menu. You just push the menu, obviously, and you have input, and you can have some upsampling, you have filters, you have volume control, you have volume trim, what you want to assign to function 1 button, what you want to assign to the function 2 button, what kind of remote you've got, as it supports a multitude of remote controls. Actually, I can show you something. I have actually set this thing up with a cute little application on my HTC as it supports the Apple remote. So I've downloaded a Apple remote and I can basically use the cellular phone to set the volume, etc. So that's quite cool. Or you can just buy a Apple remote control. So back into the menu. Display, this is for dimming, etc., and you have some firmware to check what kind of firmware version you've got, and back to the input. So basically you just click on the volume knob and set the various inputs, which input you would like. This can also be selected on the function button or on the remote. You also have upsampling, and you have the capability of turning it off, which I've currently got as I don't like to have it on. And you have some filters, both for PCM and DSD. The PCM is just slow and sharp, and I prefer slow. And you have the DSD filters, which basically you can put the noise out of the audible range, and that's quite helpful. To be honest, I didn't really notice much difference between the three, so I just put it on maximum, as I'm a kind of guy who likes to do everything at max. So that's the filters, and then you have the volume control. Now this is quite interesting. You have an analog volume control and you have a digital volume control, so you can select between the two. I prefer the analog volume control. It sounds a tad smoother than the more edgy sounding digital volume control, whereas the digital is a little bit more precise, but there are no imbalances or anything like that. Furthermore, you have the option of putting it in bypass, and as you can see now, it asks me to confirm that I want to put it in bypass, which is a great security feature, because if you have this connected up to your power amp and you accidentally flip it over to bypass, you are running at max volume and probably burning your speakers. So you don't want to put it. If you wanted to confirm, you would push the volume knob. So let's put it back to analog, which is my preference, and then go back here, and you have volume trim. If you think that if you would like some more wiggle room, you can put it on -14 decibels, and you have assigning function 1 and 2, and you have the remote. So if you want to enable the remote, and yes, it's on, and you can also have set the mode of the remote control, etc. That's where you choose if you want Apple remote and stuff like that. And we have display, which is how bright you want it. And let's go in here. You can see, you can't probably see this, but now it's ultra bright, and now it's very subtle. As I said, not easy to see that in the video. And you have the meters if you want to turn them off and on, these meters. So there we go. So now it's back to analog. So that's basically how you operate the unit. And well, that's that really. Okay, so now to the sound characteristics of the Mytek Digital. As I said in the beginning, I've been using it for quite a few applications. So since the most relevant for you guys is probably the headphones output, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Basically, this unit can drive all the headphones I've thrown at it, including the Sennheiser HD 650 and the Odyssey LCD2s and HD 600s, and it also works very well with low impedance cans and efficient cans like the Denon AHD 7000s. So it's a very good headphone amplifier, but it could have been better, and I'm going to explain why now. Or at least this is my hypothesis. Firstly, when I got the unit, I was very happy about it, but as time went along, I thought that it lacked a little bit in the lower regions as compared to other headphone amplifiers. Standalone headphone amplifiers like the Aurolic Taurus MK1 or the Bioelectric V200. So it lacked a little bit of low end. I would say it's very similar to the Grace Design M903, which is basically in the same product category and similarly priced. However, the Grace M903 does not have DSD support, at least not as of today, and I think there are hardware requirements to implement DSD support as well, so it probably has to release a new version. However, concerning the headphones output, I have been browsing around and some people blame the lacking low end on a resistor which are put into the headphone amp circuitry to prevent shortages, because when you plug a TRS plug in here, you actually short it while it's plugged in. So when this goes in, you are actually shorting the circuitry until it's all the way in. And the operational amplifier that's in the Mytek can't sustain that shortage. So they have put an resistor to prevent the operational amplifier to short when you short this at input, and that resistor have a value between 10 and 20 ohms. I have not verified the color codes on the resistor myself, but I asked Mytek and they said 10 ohms. People in the forums online say 20 ohms, and what some people have done is they have bypassed that resistor. And when they bypass that resistor, the low end is far better on the headphones output on this device. So that's an idea. If you would like to do that to such an expensive device, I won't be doing it. I think that the people who want to do that have to turn off the device before they plug in the headphones, or they might damage the operational amplifier. But that's the only difference. Now, when the resistor is there, you can just plug them in, obviously. So that's that part of the review. So the headphone amplifier is good, but it's not as great as other headphone amplifiers which are more standalone. As a digital to analog converter, it is truly exceptional in my opinion. I have tried many digital to analog converters, and truth be told, I don't hear the huge differences in digital to analog converters when using headphones. But in stereo setups, I hear the differences quite a little bit more. I think they are more obvious in the stereo system than in headphones. However, I do hear a difference between a really cheap digital to analog converter and an expensive one. So it's a great headphones. It's a great digital to analog converter. In DSD mode, it is so absolutely fantastic. It's like when you listen to DSD, a goodly, well-recorded DSD album for the first time, I think that all other types of music sounds veiled in comparison. It's quite extraordinary, actually. When you listen to DSD, everything, it's like you are out and looking up at the sky, and every star is just crystal clear. Everything is crystal clear. The bass is so defined, and well, I'm inclined to say that the good old cliche, you want to listen to all your music all over again, because you are just experiencing everything for the very first time. Unfortunately, you can't do that because the adaptation of DSD is not that broad yet, so there's not all that many albums, but there are quite a few classics, so that's great. So DSD wise, it's absolutely phenomenal, and I also like it a lot with the likes of streaming services like Spotify, and I use a lot of Spotify, so it's very, very good, and especially when used as a DAC only. If you use it as a DAC for a standalone headphones amplifier, I think you will be very impressed with the unit. It has crisp highs, it has very neutral mids, very good extension when used as a digital to analog converter and as a preamp, I might add. So it's a very, very good device. As I said, I've also used it as a preamplifier both in this system and in my main stereo system, and it also works exceptionally well there. It is a professional unit, and from what I hear from it, I don't find it colored in any way, shape or form. I think it's very neutral, and that's that really. It's a neutral and very good digital to analog converter. So that's basically the sound characteristics. Now let's go over to the pros and cons. Now let's go over to the pros and cons. That should probably be the other way around. It should probably be cons and pros. Okay, so let's talk pros and cons. The first con is obviously the resistor in the headphones output, if it is the resistor. I'm not sure. People who have shorted out and bypassed the resistor says that the low end on the headphones output is much greater, so that's worth noting. Secondly, another thing that's a con about this unit is that it comes with two sets of drivers, one for USB 2.0 and one for Firewire. The unit itself can be flashed by, you can download firmware and upgrade to the latest firmware from Mytek Digital's site. However, flashing the firmware can only be done using Firewire connection, and the unit does not come with a Firewire cable. So basically you have to go out and buy a Firewire cable in order to upgrade the firmware. However, it does come with a USB cable, so you can use it straight out of the box, but it's weird that they would optimize upgrading firmware etc. towards Firewire and not include a Firewire cable, in my opinion. So that's a little con. It's not huge, but when makes you wonder if the unit is more geared towards Firewire than USB. I use it in Firewire anyways, and like the results a lot. The third con is that you can't set the volume individually for the XLR outputs, the RCA outputs, and the headphone output individually. So you can't have one volume setting for the headphones, one volume setting for the XLRs, and one volume setting for the RCAs. Basically, when you are running the digital volume control, you can only set one setting. When you run it in analog, you can, however, set both the headphones volume and both of the XLR and RCA output. So analog individual for the headphones and both of the analog and both of the single-ended and balanced outputs. Digital, only one volume for all outputs. Okay, so that's the three cons I have to pick with it. Now the pros. The pros, it's tiny, it looks fantastic, it sounds great, it has a lot of functionality, it does DSD absolutely phenomenal, even though it's the first DSD DAC I've heard. I think it just it's just amazing for DSD, and it does a fantastic job on all the other files I've thrown at it as well. And as I said, I use it with a pair of JBL 4343B vintage studio monitors, and I think it's just fantastic as a preamplifier as well. So it's great. I'm going to show you, probably putting a couple of pictures of this unit in the system if I can find some. So all in all, a great little unit with good connectivity. I like that it has the RCA inputs as well, and well, I am quite surprised about this thing. I really like it and I highly recommend it. So you guys have a very nice day, and thank you for watching.